Welcome back, everyone, to this newest episode of Trekyards. It's me, Captain Foley.
And of course me, Commander Cockings, and today we have a special guest joining us, the man behind not only the USS Franklin from Star Trek Beyond, not only the early concept art for the Enterprise A, but of course the topic of today's discussion, Starbase Yorktown. Everyone, please welcome Sean Hargreaves back to the show, everyone.
Hi guys, hi everyone. Glad to be back.
Thanks for joining us again today, Sean. Always a pleasure to learn more about the inner workings of Star Trek Beyond. So today, as Samuel just stated, we'll be looking at the Starbase Yorktown as seen in the latest Star Trek movie. Now, it's a real departure, in my mind anyways, from any Star Trek design style that we've seen so far in regards to starbases. All right, well, take us back to day one. When did you know that you would be designing this space station? And just what did the script call for exactly? Was McCoy's line, "It looks like a damn giant snow globe in space just waiting to break," already established and kind of somewhat set the tone for the station?
No, not at all. That was written in later, and it was great for him to say that because it's just the kind of thing you would expect him to say, you know. Yeah. It wasn't established in terms of any kind of design language. They weren't, and again, like I say, it's, you know, films nowadays are very organic, so they didn't have the fingers on exactly the action that was going within. The designs hopefully always reflect the action of the film, so it was kind of a little bit amorphous at that point. So when I came onto the film, they did know that they wanted to be a spherical type of space station with some arms that came out from the middle, and but there were some issues with exactly what it looked like, and they spent a certain amount of time on it, and I just came in and I kept looking at it. It was in the hallways. You know, our hallways had images of illustrations that had been done and were being worked on, and I kept looking at it, and it just was gelling in my head, and then I had to go. I think I said, let me have a go at Yorktown. I don't know if it was given to me, but I just had an idea and I did it, and they went for it.
What do you think was important to include, and did you actually look at any of the space stations we saw in the Trek universe to see if there are any conventions you wanted to include for such space structures? Either Space Dock, as you already mentioned in Star Trek 3, Search for Spock, or the Kelvin Timeline Dock, as seen in the previous two films.
They were going to shoot in Dubai, and we were going to have this cityscape. And I couldn't really follow anything that had been done before because, you know, the effects didn't allow for that in the past, and to do the most involved thing that we did in this one. And so I just I put that aside and followed the script and followed what, you know, what you would hopefully naturally do with something like this, and design it. You know, when I design stuff, I don't think, oh, this will be a cool shape, let me justify it. It's what is the justification for the shape? And then you make it look good, but you have to have the backup for why it looks like that. And how are they going to, with all these different angles, how are they going to not float away, and all this kind of stuff? And how does a city develop? How is it fed? What's the transportation? Where does the water come from? All this kind of stuff. You don't have to go crazy about it unless the script asks for it, but you certainly have to have some kind of thought process behind the development of your design in that way.
How many design ideas did you initially come up with for this thing? Like, how many variations before going with the basic design that we see on film? Or was it a pretty straightforward process for you?
It was very quick. It was probably a week and a half. I basically concentrated on one of the arms, and knowing that it was going to be duplicated. The sphere in the middle was something I did later on, and the outer shell was something I was dealing with later on, but I just needed to get the arms because that was where the main, that would have, once that was approved, then I can multiply it and array it around the disk. I basically did this square section tunnel, and then I made it into an ellipse because I love parabolic curves, and I just wanted to give it some kind of nice style, you know. And one thing that was really weird, actually, I want to say, is they wanted, when I did this parabolic curved tube, they wanted the buildings to be 90 degrees to the surface at all times. So basically, if you think of the top of a bridge being arced or arched, if a building is on that bridge, it's going to be splaying out. So you're going to have it vertical, and the next one's going to be, off vertical, and you're going to go down to 45 degrees. And I did an illustration of that, and I told them that it's going to be really odd, and we did the illustration. Yeah, it was odd. So nixed that one. And I made the top of the outside basically flat, and then the inside I kept the parabolic curves, the ellipse, and went from there.
That means you get the most surface area to work with. It's only good design. Yeah, makes sense. But Star Trek Beyond, of course, takes place in the Kelvin timeline, and we are 3 films at this point, and decades away from the split in the timeline. That said, did you try and keep any little visual continuity or small details from anything we'd seen before, either, as we said, the Prime timeline or the Kelvin timeline? Or was the idea this was a new and state-of-the-art station that was your cue to go for something really, truly new?
Each arm was going to be for a different species. And each city, and this is what took a lot of time, which ended up being nixed. Each arm was going to be so you'd have the Vulcan arm, and you'd have name all of the species, and you'd have an arm for it. And relative to that arm, you would have your architecture. So you'd have the Vulcan architecture, you'd have that. So when you looked at, like, for example, when they had the fight at the end, you would see these different arms from these different places. And it didn't, I don't know what happened there. Decisions are made out of your hands, and I think, again, it was one of those things, unless it's going to drive the story, they're not going to spend the time and the money on coming up with all of this different architecture, having the architecture approved, which is a long time to do, and then having the visual effects build all this different architecture. It was easier and more financially intelligent to just develop it as a conglomerate of buildings and then multiply them through all of the different arms and have this entire space station, serving many different species, which is basically, it's kind of like what we have today. You have different architects doing different buildings in different cities and different parts around the world, so you're going to have a little bit of a different look. All the buildings aren't going to look the same, and that's kind of what we ended up with in Yorktown.
Well, I've got to sort of jump in there. So when you look at the film, it's sort of vaguely difficult to work out exactly how many arms there are, and they all sort of splay off in different ways. Is it then the same arm that you designed multiplied, or is it several variations and how they interconnect, or is it roughly the same multiplied?
I did 4 different arms, and not 4 different arms with the buildings. I did 1 arm with the buildings fully decked out and fully rendered and modeled out. Then I did 3 other arms where it was just the arm that had the, I call it the bent ribbon effect, which is the architectural aesthetic that I came up with. And I just did 3 different variations of the first arm off that. So, and I gave that to visual effects. And then they basically did the plug and play, which is they plugged different parts into different parts, and it's almost like a Lego, which is the way you really do these gigantic cityscapes and gigantic places now in visual effects.
So I want to jump in again there. I want to go back to that idea of having different arms being different races. You as a designer and as a Star Trek fan, how would you have felt to actually have been tasked to go in and develop? I mean, you mentioned one, but the Vulcans, Andorians, Tellarites. There's presumably a dozen, although we only know a couple of them, each one being very unique. We've seen the Starling's Enterprise, we know vaguely some post TOS stuff. I mean, how would you have felt to do that much design work and that, I guess, setting the tone for so much for the future?
I didn't think about that setting the tone when I was given it. I didn't have the same feeling doing that as I did doing the Enterprise in terms of, the effect that it would have. We did do the Tellarites and Andorans and the Vulcan just to start off with, those buildings. And I had an assistant who was a 3D modeler, and I would guide him and we would come up with some ideas. And it would have been a great responsibility, and it would have been another interesting thing to talk about on your show, and then listen to people's comments, because everyone's going to have a different view of what they should be.
I'm gonna have a jump in again. What
Yeah.
does a Dorian building look like? I'm fascinated. Like, obviously, the only thing we know about them, sorry, Stuart, is the white hair, the blue skin, and the antennas. What did you do for that then? Did you?
Can't even remember. I got to tell you, because it was over a year ago, I can't remember what they looked like. We did one series which was very pyramidal and very repetitious in terms of their flaws, and it was really beautiful actually. And we did some research on stuff. There was just some of the stuff just had no information.
Yeah,
And
so I was asking.
and yeah, so you just had to come up with it. And it's just one of those things where you're given a project and you do your best at it, and then you put it out there, and hopefully that it works out. And like I said, that just it didn't happen script wise or action wise.
Are you finished now, Sam?
Yes, I was interested. It's a good. That's really
All right. This facility looks very civilian oriented and not purely Starfleet like we see the space dock in Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock. Again, was this your idea, or was this something that was kind of set down for you by Justin Lin or in the script?
That was a script. Yeah, that was script.
Okay.
When I got the Yorktown, we knew we were going to have arms. We knew we were going to have an outer shell. We knew we were going to have a central sphere. So I took that and went from there. And what I did was basically put the camera in there, surface level, and just point it around at different angles, so they could kind of get an idea of what they were going to see. And they realized, well, you know what? There's areas where you see a lot of stuff, like where the central sphere is, with the arms coming off. And then when you turn 180 and you start looking out to the shell, because of the angles of the arms, you don't see much at all. And Justin actually came up with the idea of there are arms that are actually rings. They ring around at different angles. So that was a Justin Lin idea. He said, let's have some arms coming over that are going at 90 degrees to the angle of the straight arm, and they're more like a ring. So I added those rings, and I think they even added even more when Dina got hold of it. Because once you start getting into the shots of the film, that's where the VFX take over, because they're designing relative to the shot, you're designing relative to the design and relative to the story. So the visual effects will start moving these huge structures around to give you depth and to make the shot more beautiful and dynamic, especially when I'm not moving around in 3D. I'm not animating my stuff because the models are so gigantic. But the visual effects are actually, they're testing shots and they're moving in and around these huge structures. And that one opening shot of Yorktown, it's a long shot. I think it's long for visual effects. I think it's about 10 seconds. And where you really get the feeling of Yorktown. I'm sure they did that a bunch of times just in the raw renders and just working out and bringing in these rings and moving arms around. And so it's pretty involved, Once you hand off and once you've established your look and your placements of things, then you hand it off. But then the cinema of it takes over and things start getting moved about,
Yeah, and I gotta say, I'm a huge fan of the visual style that the CG guys did for the Beyond. You can tell some serious cinematography, some serious artistry went into composing these shots. And I rewatched a bit of it for the Yorktown scenes, and again, just really amazing cinematography that just stands out to me. So yeah, again, that working with your great design really makes it come to life. But let's talk internals. And again, it's all pre-written before you start saying things. So I'm just gonna go into it. Wow, what intricate station. One problem with Star Trek that's always had is limitations with gravity. It's a TV budget, and many producers didn't think the audiences would understand other views, different gravity planes. Take the time Ro and Geordi were out of phase. They should have gone through the floor, and space battles on the same plane. But space, 3D. These are limitations in thinking, but Yorktown has a plethora of arms, some upside down, some really out there, because there is no up and down in space. I love this. Talk us through this gravity-defying idea.
Well, it's very complicated, actually. It was. I brought up a bunch of. A few of us brought up some issues with regards to the gravity on this, because we had gravity on the surface of. If we just talk about one arm, we had gravity on the surface of the arm, which is holding the people to the top of the arm, just like a regular city. Then underneath there, you have a floating spacecraft. Right, going through the arm, and then on the other side of the arm, there's people literally upside down, pulling, because it's the other side, because there's a city on both sides of the arms. And so uh, so basically that was the establishment of that kind of gravity. Why is a ship floating? Well, there's zero gravity inside the arms, at the very center of the arms, and there's zero gravity at the very pinnacle of where the arms come together at the sphere, and that's where the end battle happens, and that's why they can float around and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's pushing a little. It was all the whole thing of, well, they have artificial gravity on the ship, and so we can have the same technology of artificial gravity. We can have them on the top of the arm. We can have them on the bottom of the arm. We can put the artificial gravity wherever we want within reason, because you don't want to have it all over the place because they start getting pulled apart. But that was a justification for that whole deal. And that end fight that we saw in the film, it was tricky. It was tricky figuring out those buildings, how they met, and the angles of the arms, and the 3 points of those buildings, and that whole area was going to be. I mean, I tried to sell it. It didn't go all the way. It went to a certain point, and then they kind of nixed it. I tried to sell the fact that part of each arm, the central part of the whole Yorktown, was an industrial complex, and that these were these huge spires and machines, and they were air vents and oxygen things going on, and they climb up that's how they get to the top of these huge buildings.
Anyway, it just occurred to me actually that many of the early Deep Space Nine concepts also had docking rings rather than pylons. Now, nothing quite as intricate as Yorktown, but have you ever seen any of Rick Sternbach's early concept designs for Deep Space Nine?
Actually, I handed my design off to DNEG, and they came back with the design that me and my art director Dan Hermanson said. We looked at each other and we said Deep Space Nine, because they had those fingers up and fingers down thing, which are the signature of that station. In my view, it looks cool. So that was altered. Sometimes things happen that you're like, oh, that looks like so and so, and you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, it does.
So in your mind, though, talk to us about this station. Talk us through this station. What is its purpose in your mind? How advanced is it really? Beyond the gravity-defying architecture, do you think she's more advanced than the space dock we see from Star Trek 3, which is obviously built ahead of this station in the prime timeline?
Well, I think it serves a different purpose than the space dock. I mean, all space stations aren't the same thing. This is a colony of different. I mean, the space dock also is, but it's that design, again, like all design should be in films. It's designed for a story. The ship, the space dock that you're talking about, the mushroom, it's designed. All the beats in those scenes are relative to that. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't have that. You wouldn't have Yorktown for that story because it doesn't work. It's not the same thing. You got this beautiful enclosed space station, these huge doors that open, and it's being chased. I love that. Yorktown is a different kind of thing, and Yorktown. The basis of Yorktown was really what Roddenberry wanted, which is all different species living together in harmony. And it was, if anything, it was trying to have a deep representation of his vision, and that's what he was talking about. There it is.
Well, I'll tell you something. When I saw the film for the first time, I literally turned to my mother and said, this one shot set up the Federation's utopia, the initial shot where you see everyone together. That is all you need to set up this is a truly that has done more than the last two films and many others to set up the vision. That's all you needed, and it was phenomenally well done.
I think that really would have hit home more with the original idea of having each arm be a different represent the visual style of the.
And I think that was another reason it was probably next, is because you get, oh, this is our section, that's your section, you stay over here and we're over here. But Yorktown represents Roddenberry's vision more than a planet would, because you see it as a whole. There it is. There's the vision right there. It's the people living together from all these different races and places. So that was definitely behind our minds, and for the 50th anniversary, it was important to kind of show that.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at Space Dock, obviously there's no. You get a sense it's a very functional station, and once you see the internal parking structure, you know what it's there for. But the windows are so abstract. Yorktown, once you see the people, you see every building, you get a sense there's a humongous, which we're about to ask in a minute, still asking in a minute, this is a populated, living place, and you see the people, you get a sense, you say, of true utopia, and I think that was amazing.
My next question is, how big is Yorktown, and how many people do you see stationed on her? Now, there would be crew, and then families and civilians, of course, as well, so what percentage of the structures and stuff do you think are Starfleet and military-based, and how much are more civilian?
Well, in terms of the size of it, when I handed it off, each arm was 17.5 miles long, and I believe the central disc was 6 miles in diameter. We never really talked about military. It was just that the outer shell had military encampment, little nodes where they would have defense areas that could repel any attack, and the same thing on the inside. Along the arms you would have little areas, but it wasn't. Again, it was really trying to represent something that was peaceful but not weak. There's a difference.
How many people overall do you think would be on something that's between 40 and 50 miles long? It's crazy.
Well, the thing is I don't even know how many arms they ended up with.
A lot of surface area, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of surface area. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, it's Jeez, it was never really discussed. It was kind of like one of those things where you see the arms, you see the cities, and you go, "Oh, there's a lot of people there." So it wasn't like, Sean, we've got 100 million people on here. Design relative to that.
And this time we have the extras to show it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah. So I can't really tell you how many. Sorry to Samuel. Samuel's like, God, you don't even know.
And I'm just trying to think. I mean, it's certainly a multi-million. I mean, it's a real. You're not going to know everyone. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people.
Okay, so was it ever included in the script the idea that Yorktown was built next to an anomaly with uncharted space inside of it, very similar to the Delphic Expanse? Why do you think Starfleet would build that one-of-a-kind newest space station within a short sublight distance from an unknown region of space? We, of course, see in the film that the Enterprise crew if they hadn't stopped Krall's plan, he would have defeated Yorktown without any real opposition, showing just how potentially dangerous that location was. So, what are your thoughts on having it right next to that kind of weird nebulous anomaly?
I always thought the nebulous anomaly was just it was a place that you could jump off from Yorktown to explore. It was another area that wasn't really explored. As far as danger and as far as things coming from that, like is what happened. Yeah, in hindsight, yeah, it's kind of stupid. But I always thought that it's that nebulous area is now a story point in Star Trek, and anyone can go through that and find something else that's maybe uncharted.
I mean, to be fair, it was never. We know that they said in the movie that they normally hadn't been charted, but then this one-man craft at the start of the film showed them the way through, and then the Enterprise with its advanced sensors got through. So now they can explore. It could be 100 light years across, and therefore it could be worth that huge thing.
Next time on Trekyards, the rest of this episode.
Yeah, it's pretty normal. Like, you expect this from us now. It's just like next time, next episode, it'll be great. It'll be great. If you're still watching this video, and we're still talking, why? Just watch something else. Watch another Trekkers video.
It's over. It's over. Go home.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.